It's Wednesday afternoon, and I was thinking what we could do today, this afternoon, would be to cover some destructuring. This is something that's probably going to come up from time to time here in the stack, so thought let's try to kind of develop some comfortability with it. All right. So first thing, I'm just going to create a file that we're going to be working in, kind of like the same way that we were yesterday. So let's do touch destructuring.js, and then I will open it up in VS Code. Structuring.js. Shoot, keeps opening it in some other directory. All right, let me open up a new VS Code window. Then I want to go to my lectures, destructuring. Cool. All right, and then do you guys remember how I had this thing reloading for me constantly? What was I using for that again? No daemon. Yeah, nodemon, no daemon.
That's how I remember.
No, that's cool. No worries. So let's run it, right? We'll say nodemon destructuring.js. Okay. Oh, I'm not in the appropriate directory, so let me get there. Dojo cd stacks mern lectures. Okay, let's try that one more time. All right. So we are reloading our file, which is very nice. Let's talk about what we can do with destructuring. So sometimes when we're working in JavaScript, we're going to have some objects that have, say, some levels of nesting in them, right? Some objects will be really simple where we'll just have some key value pairs, and then other objects might have some deeper levels that we want to sort of get into. Especially if you're making some requests to some outside service, we call these APIs, and you're going to get back some big giant blob of what's called JSON. So that's just JavaScript object notation. A lot of times you're going to want to be able to traverse that and get to specific places in it. So what we've got now with this destructuring that we're going to talk about is sort of a nicer, more user-friendly way of doing just that. So what I want to do to start out with is just create a basic object. What do you guys want to create? A person or something like that? Does that work? Dragon Ball.
You need 7 of them.
All right. Since you said something, Shazay, I'm going to create you. All right. I don't.
They don't have accent marks in there.
Yeah, I know. It's like, how do I get that? Does anyone know?
The ASCII thing where you do like control. What is it? Control Alt Shift and then like a number combination.
All right, too complicated already. We'll skip that. We'll just call you Shays. All right. Shays. I mean, I'm sure you've gotten that before. So we're creating Shazay. Let's say Shazay has a first name, which is also Shays, right? Shays. All right. Your last name is Williams, right? All right. Williams. Okay. And Shazay's got an email that is s@w.com. All right. Very good. So I've just created in JavaScript what's called an object literal. Just a literal object. I've defined some key value pairs. That's all good, right? Now, what if I wanted to grab a reference to Shazay's last name? Very good. Yeah, so we'll just create this new variable, right? I'll say const Shazay's last name equals Shazay dot last name, right? And then if I console log that out, Shazay's last name. Indeed, we're seeing Williams down there. Let me make this a little bigger. Okay. Yeah, pretty exciting, right? But I had to use this dot notation to actually get inside that property.
Why?
Why what?
Because it's constant.
Do you have a better way?
No.
So yeah, let's back up for a second. When we want to grab the value of a specific key inside of an object, one way that we can do it is using dot notation in JavaScript. There is another way. Does anyone know what the other way is that we can access? No, even before destructuring. It's a good idea though. We're gonna get there. Let? Now you're just throwing stuff out there. Alright. Let. Alright, so we can also use bracket notation as well. Okay, in the same way that I can access an index of an array, I can also do the same thing with objects. So if I want to get that last name, again, what I can do is, instead of dot last name, I could say bracket, only this time I need to make that a string. Okay? And if I save that, same thing. This will also do what we want, right? But again, I'm having to kind of go into this object a little bit. What if I could sort of reach into the object and extract out what I wanted from it without even needing to do it quite like this? Is there a way that you guys can think that we can handle that? Destructuring.
Yeah.
That's what we're here for. Yeah, so the way that I want to present destructuring is kind of like this. Let's say I had a cup that had a whole bunch of change in it, right? A whole bunch of different coins and so forth. And I wanted to get something specific out of the cup. Well, maybe what I'd have to do if I didn't really know what the structure of that cup looked like, I might have to sort of pour everything out and then look through it, right? But what if I knew what the structure was inside that cup and I knew exactly where certain types of coins were? I know that pennies are over here, right? And I could kind of go and reach into the penny pile and go grab one off the top of that. That's kind of like what destructuring is. It allows us to be a little bit more specific about what we're getting and just reach into certain objects and go and grab them out. Okay? So let's see what that would look like in actual code. Here, I'm going to just comment these guys out here. And I'm going to do a destructured way. So we're going to say const. Inside these curly braces, I'm going to say last name equals Chazé. Okay? That's kind of weird looking, right? So what does that mean? What are we doing there?
Going inside the consonant of Chazé.
So what we're doing is we're going inside the Chazé object, and I'm specifically pulling out the last name property, which is going to give me, if I were to log this variable, which we'll do in a second, what are we expecting that to say? Expecting it to be Williams, yeah, because it's going to be the value of that key. All right, so let's console log it out. Last name. Okay, same thing. All right. You can see how this is very nice because it sort of shows exactly what the structure of that object is, right? Even though that object has some other key value pairs, I'm able to zoom in on the exact one that I want. Right? I don't really need to worry about the first name or the email. I just wanted the last name. That was it. Okay.
That's easier than the previous two.
Well, that's why we're here, right? This is what makes destructuring kind of handy. Is it makes it a very easy way for us to pull out the data that we want. Now, what if I didn't want my variable to be called last name? Not a semicolon, you're close. A colon, right? I can actually use a colon and rename that variable something else. So let's try that. So let's say last name colon Chazé's last name. And now this time, if I try to console log last name, what happens now? Last name is it's actually a reference error. It's not just undefined, right? We've never even declared that variable anywhere. because now the variable is called this. Okay? So I just need to update my console log to reflect that we changed that variable name. So let's say Shazay's last name, and now we're okay. Williams again, right? Okay. What if I'm trying to destructure a property that I think might be in the object, but I'm actually not 100% sure? That's an interesting idea. So using the spread operator, okay. Or I could potentially set a default value, which is sort of like a fallback. So if I'm looking inside this object for a specific property and maybe it's not going to be there, I might want to have like a fallback value, right? So let's say I'm reaching inside this object and I'm trying to find something like eye color. Okay? If I log this out, what are we expecting eye color to give us? It won't be a reference error, right? Because we actually do now have that variable. But what is that key in terms of this object? It's undefined, right? That key doesn't exist inside there. So that's what we're expecting. We're expecting it to log undefined. Let's make sure that it does. Yes, indeed, undefined. Okay. But I want to provide a fallback value just in case the object does not have an icon. Okay? Anyone know how I can do that? Not a colon, right? The colon was used if we want to actually rename that key to something else. Equal. So I can just say equals black, like that, and there we go. Now we have like a default fallback value for eye color. Okay? All right, any questions about this before we kind of move into some deeper waters, I should say?
I guess for this sake, it's using the default value if eye color is undefined rather than key not found or key is found but is undefined.
Yeah, so it's going to use our default value if this key did not exist in the object. Not if so if the key had some type of falsy value, like let's just for instance put here. Let's say she has an eye color that's false. We wouldn't expect our fallback to come into play there, right? Because the key actually exists, so we would expect it to be false like this. Make sense? All right, so our fallback only comes into play if that key did not exist inside the object. All right. Let's go one level deeper. Let's say that Shazay has some interests. Okay? And we're just going to create out an array here. Shazay, what do you like to do? Anything else? That's a good one, though. More code? You like playing kickball, right?
No.
Okay, you like sports day. Sports. Whoops. Sports day. Okay. Anything else? Netflix. Okay. Watching. Oops. TV. Yeah, what happened there? What did I do here on the second line? These are backticks.
Yeah,
And the reason why I use backticks is because before, when I was using single quotes, I knew that I was going to have a problem here with the single quote. Now, the other way that I can handle that is I can escape that single quote by doing a backslash in front of it. But I just opted to use backticks because when we use backticks, we don't have to worry about double quotes or single quotes. They're all good. Okay?
What character is backtick on the keyboard?
It is your. It's right to the left of your one.
Got it.
Yeah.
It's a tilde or whatever it's called, right? Tilde?
No, the tilde is that wavy looking thing, right?
You could use
Just don't
the
press
arrow. Input
True.
quotes.
I could also use double quotes here, and then I wouldn't have to worry about that single quote. True.
That's easier.
The other cool thing about these backticks, though, that I think I've shown you guys maybe once or twice, is that if we use backticks, we can also insert JavaScript expressions inside of our strings.
Yes.
Alright.
Like
Yep.
this.
Yeah, for instance, I'll show you an example of that. So let's say we've got this variable called sports, and I set it equal to this, oh, keep running into this problem, sports, like this, right? Then if I want to put that inside this string, what I can do is I can do $, and then inside there, the sports variable. Okay? So what that's going to do is it's going to take the value for this variable and just basically drop it into that string for me. It'll evaluate it that way. So that's kind of nice.
What type of string is that? Is there a word for it, like F strings or something?
This is called a template literal, I believe is what it is. But this concept that you'll see in different languages is called string interpolation.
Ah, okay.
Yeah. So you'll hear that thrown about a little bit. All right. So right now we've got this little array with a few interests in it. So what if I wanted to get Shazay's first interest? How could I do that? Yeah, so let's kind of go back to our normal way of doing things. So I'll just come down here and we'll say const first interest equals Shazay dot interest. I don't know what's wrong with my typing sometimes. And then if I want the first one, how do I get that specifically?
Square back?
So I'm going to do square braces and then 0, right? That would give me the index of 0. Okay? And then if I console log this out, we would expect that to be her first interest was coding. Oops. Okay? Code. Maybe that should say coding. All right, so that worked. But how could we maybe do this with destructuring? According to kind of what we were doing before, where we were reaching into the object at one level, could we potentially reach into it at a couple levels deep? Maybe. Let's see how we could potentially do that. So I'm going to do something like this. Or let me just comment this out here. And what we need to do is we need to create at least the first level of our structure. So we need to say interests. And then inside there, I'm going to create a little array. It looks like I'm creating this, but actually I'm sort of decreating it from the other side. So I'm just going to call the first thing inside there first interest. And then again, I'm going to set this equal to Shazay. Okay? Same thing. So what we've done is we've gone in one level to her interest, right? And then inside that level, we know we have an array, so that's why we can destructure, because we already know what the structure of this thing could look like. We decided, hey, I want to go and grab the very first item that's inside that array, and I want to call it this. This time I had my choice of names because we're inside of an array. If we were inside of an object and I wanted to change the name, what would I have to use again? A colon to like rename it to whatever I wanted it to be called. Okay? What if I wanted to get her second interest? How could we do that? Yeah, so let's do this. So let's just do a comma and then say second interest here. And then log that out. Now sports day, right? Cool. All right. What if, well, actually, before we even move forward, does this part kind of make sense to you guys? How we were able to ignore the very first item in the array and only be interested in the second one?
So each comma is one item.
One item, exactly. So those things have to correspond to the particular index you're interested in. But the 0 index is back here, but we haven't assigned a variable to it. It's like it kind of doesn't exist for our purposes, right?
What about if you put 2 commas? You just have
So if I put 2 commas, this should really be called third interest, right? So let's try that. Oops. And then we want to change this, because otherwise second interest is going to be a reference error. Okay, now we got watching TV. Yes?
And even though there isn't a fourth interest, can you set a fallback?
That's a very good question. I feel like that wouldn't work, but let's try it anyway. So let's say fourth interest equals hockey. Oops. Okay.
oh.
I'm very happy about that. I hope you are too. That's cool. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily expecting that to work, but yeah, yeah, that's kind of cool.
I have superpowers.
So you don't necessarily have to like put the interest in the
What do you mean, Alejandro? I'm not following either. I don't have to put the word.
if you can scroll up a little bit, please.
Okay.
You don't have like to put like coding or sports day or watching TV on interest. You just can adding them to the one what you just did.
Well, I'm not really following you because they already are part of this Chaze's object, right?
I think what he's saying is that it's not necessary to, like, if you wanted to, like on the bottom, like how you add the equals, like fourth interest equals
Equals hockey.
into hockey,
Mhm.
like he's saying that if those wasn't on the top, like the voting sports day, if that wasn't on the top, you could just enter it directly.
Yeah, that's what.
Oh, if I set those as defaults for these other guys as well, like if I said
Yeah.
third interest had a default value of whatever. Yeah, we could do that. Sure.
So you don't necessarily have to like have it in the top.
Right, but the thing is, like, you want to make sure that this is really truly only a fallback. If it's one of those situations where that thing is rarely in the object, then maybe destructuring is not your best bet at that point. Maybe you might want to do an if-then check to see if it's even in there. I don't know. It depends on the context. You won't always do things the same way. But yeah, this can come in handy if sometimes it's there and sometimes it's not. Just a default value. All right, cool. So does this pretty much make sense for everybody so far? I'm not sure, like, if I want to go one level deeper, we could, but I feel like that could become a little bit less readable.
Let's go deeper.
Deeper into the scope.
Okay. Nest.
He was like saying he was busy.
Nest this thing like crazy. Okay, so let's see, what else could we add for her? Let's say she has an array of shoes. Okay, and then the first item is just, it's got like a brand, Nike. Oh, Skechers. All right.
No, Skechers.
I'm wearing them right now.
All right. What's the model?
Cross.
Rainbow.
Rainbow. Okay. All right, so now we've got a few different levels happening, right? We've got the main object, and then inside that we've got this shoes array, and then inside that, of course, we've got various objects. Okay? So let's say I just wanted to get the model of her first pair of shoes. How would I do that?
You have to get access to
Days on
shoes.
shoes.
So let's do this. So we'll say const, and then inside here we'll say shoes, right? And then here we've got this array, right? Okay. First pair of shoes, is gonna have its own object inside of it. And then to get the model of that, I'll just do model, right? And then we'll set this whole thing equal to Chazé. So now let's console log model. Okay, rainbow. That's nice. And again, if I didn't want it to be called model, I could call it something else. So I could call it Chazé's first model. And then we should have that down here. First model. Same thing. Okay. What if I tried to get the model of her second pair of shoes? What would we expect to have happen there? Yeah, so if the second pair is actually undefined and then we tried to get a property from something that's undefined, that would be an error, right? All right, so let's go about that. Okay, and then oops. Actually I did that wrong. So okay, can't destructure model of undefined or null. So the second element in that shoes array was completely undefined, right? Because there was nothing in there. So that's why we're having that problem. Okay. What if I wanted to provide a fallback for that? Could I do that? I could, right? So if I go up here and I say in my first object, what if I just gave it a fallback object of an empty object? Now what would we expect that to log? Undefined, right? Because now I've got this fallback object that has no key value pairs inside of it. So if I'm trying to go see model from that, it should be undefined, no? Or actually, yeah. Whoops, what happened here? So the problem is we actually tried to give it a different name. So let's do this. Let's say, and I put that in the wrong place. So actually I gave a default value for the first element. I meant to give a default value for the second one. Okay, so let's get rid of that. And then let's say the second one equals an empty object. Okay, now it's undefined. Can you see how this is like starting to break down in terms of its usefulness? It's starting to get a little bit confusing just to see what's going on.
What if, like, they have 5 pair of shoes, but you want the last pair's bottom? Are you gonna type like 4 commas?
That's what I was thinking.
And she has like many pairs.
You know, I think at that point I might just do something like console.log chazé.shoes 4, right, to get the 5th pair. Yeah, and then if you wanted a model, sometimes this isn't such a bad thing, you know? So destructuring is what this is called. It's sort of like in computer programs, we're always putting things together and we're also breaking things down, right? So this is the action of breaking something down that was already structured for something, right? We know what its structure is, so we can kind of use that to our advantage. But we don't want to overuse it. It's one of those tools that if you try to go very nested like that, you could run into readability issues, you know? Whereas dot notation is not necessarily that unreadable. You know, it kind of makes sense. We're going here, then we're going here, then we're going there, right? Okay. What?
No.
No, man. I refuse.
AJ likes deep.
Yeah, okay. Wow, let's keep it. Yeah.
That's
All right, so real quick, since we covered destructuring, we can also potentially cover the spread operator just slightly. Okay. So what if I was only interested in, I was interested in some properties of Chazé, but I didn't care about her first name and her last name. Could I create an object out of everything else that exists inside Chazé? How would I do that?
Two comments that use the spread and maybe something.
Here's what I'm going to try to do, and there's probably more than one way to do this, but let's say I'll just create this new variable. It's going to be Chazé without name. Okay, and then I'm going to create this object. And what it's going to be is going to be this. So I'm going to take out the first name, take out the last name. Actually, hold on a second. This is kind of what I meant to do. I wanted to say first name and last name dot 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 rest equals Chazé. So what's that doing? So it's giving me some different variables here. It's giving me a first name and last name. If I want to do something with those, I can. It's also giving me this variable called rest. What's that going to be? That's going to be everything else that was inside that object, right? So let's console log out rest down here. Open up this. Okay, so now we have this new object that has her email, her eye color, her interest, and her shoes. Does not have the first and the last name. Okay. But what was cool about this is that this was actually a brand new object. It's not like I mutated Chazé in any way, shape, or form. I didn't delete any key value pairs from her object. Her object is totally still intact. It was almost like I filtered out a couple key value pairs, right, from that object.
So,
Yes, Mark.
I just wanted to see the code.
Down here where we did that? Yeah.
so the REST object is an actual copy, so if you're actually doing modifications on the Chazé object, it will be reflected on the rest of them.
Correct. With some caveats, though. It depends. If I'm mutating something that's an object itself,
Right.
then that would also mutate this shallow copy.
That makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So one other thing I wanted to show you guys too, kind of aside from this rest spread, is if we wanted to use destructuring inside of a function, we could do that as well. Okay, so let me just create a function here. Create a function that says say first name, and then normally that's just going to take in some person, right? So if I want to say the first name, I would probably just console.log person.firstname, right? And that would be fine. And then let's invoke that function against Chazé. So let's come down here, say first name, pass in Chazé. And then, sure enough, down here, you set her first name. But what if I want to destructure her first name straight in the parameter itself? Okay, so rather than saying that I'm taking in a person, I can use destructuring to just grab the first name right out the gate. So let's change this. Instead of person, I'm going to create these little curly braces, and then inside there, we'll have first name. Now I can skip the person entirely. Still works exactly the same. And you can see how this creates, in some cases, it might look like slightly cleaner code, right? Because I didn't have to use dot notation to go get into that first name. I could destructure it straight here. And we'll see that a little bit in React as well. So I'll probably do that from time to time, and I want you guys to be aware of what's going on. That's destructuring at work. All right, let's have some thumbs on this. You forgot you were here, huh?
I don't know my opinion.
Your opinion counts, definitely, definitely.
Opinions matter.
All opinions matter. Any final questions before I let you guys go?
And for the rest, can maybe something
Hold
else.
up, guys. There is one question.
Can name the rest variable something else?
Yes, you can. Yeah, let's do that real quick. So,
Other items.
something else.
Okay, it's custom.
I took you literally. Okay. Something else. Still works.
Okay.
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want. Cool, guys. I will upload this video.